What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Occupy Fantasy Podcast. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, and we have a special interview with an Occupy Fantasy member who won $100,000 in last night's MLB DFS slate. If you're in the Occupy Fantasy Discord channel, you may know him as Minnesota Matt. He is nolt0032 on DraftKings, and he's now 100K richer. Matt, what's up, man? How you feeling?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. Can't lie. Still feeling pretty good. At Discord, I said, the low was coming a little bit there, reality setting in, but and still feeling pretty darn good.
Dude, I
Gotta be
bet.
honest.
So has it sunk in yet that you won the 100K?
Uh, I don't know. I don't know. We'll go with I don't know. No probably is the answer if I can't answer it. So there you go. There came to an answer.
Cool. So for those of you who don't know, Matt has been an Occupy Fantasy member for a couple of years now. He's been active in our Discord channel. He's actually been a key player in helping us get our lineup builder to the product that you see today. So in this interview, we're going to talk to Matt about his DFS background, talk about his NHL DFS play, his process for building lineups specifically for MLB, how he's used our lineup builder in our model, and then we'll talk about the sweat from last night because we can't forget that. So, Matt, I do want to ask you about your background because Jack, who is the creator of our lineup builder, owner of DFS Magic, he's been talking to you, and you were always putting in your 2 cents and your thoughts and your suggestions for our lineup builder ever since we launched it. And when we looked you up, we saw that you were a top 10 NHL DFS player on Roto Grinders rankings. You're still number 9. And if you look at Matt's RG profile now, again, you can search nolt0032 on Roto Grinders. He's number 9 overall and just littered with top finishes in mostly NHL GPPs. So, Matt, talk to me about your background, how you got into DFS, why you're so good at NHL DFS, and then maybe this kind of I don't know if it's a transition. Maybe you've been playing baseball, but this transition to baseball.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brian. So as well as you queued it up, I'm originally from Minnesota, so born and raised Minnesota. So if you don't like hockey and you're from Minnesota, you have a problem. So that's really where it starts. That's where it starts. So 5 years ago, I want to say, I created the account. Don't ask me about the username. It's pretty much random. It's just random. I honestly, it was a random number generator pretty much. Started 5 years ago with not much of a bankroll, but really without knowing about Occupy Fantasy, kind of following like an Occupy Fantasy strategy. And that's like how I built it up to where I've come today and be able to transition into the other sports like MLB and stuff. So I'll go back to NHL specifically, just to give everyone a little idea. It's a niche sport. I mean, some of you know this if you've played it. It's a niche sport. Prizes are a little lower, but there is a ton of edges. There's still edges today. They changed the scoring 2 years ago, and actually just last year there was, the first year we all kind of jumped and followed the trends and did this did these certain things, and then last year some of those styles started to fade out and more things are getting figured out. So there's still an amazing edge with NHL. Anyone starting up, I strongly recommend jumping in NHL. I started $3 20 maxes, 25 cent, those 25 cent 20 maxes, those quarter jukeboxes. That's what it's called. All that stuff. Started winning those consistently. Bumped the level I get to play at. Started chasing higher end satellites. It goes on from there. You guys, Occupy members, you guys kind of know the method here. So that's really kind of where I started. And for the last 2 years, I've really attacked NHL as my main sport. Like as soon as October, I don't know the date, 12th or whatever rolled around, whatever's going on. Sorry football. I mean, I'll still chase a little football, but it's all hockey all the time for me. And so not really transition to MLB. The one thing I'd say is why I played MLB is I realized it was mostly just ignorance. It was just I did not take the time to step back and learn it. It's actually very similar to NHL. Stacks reign supreme. The five we'll talk about it a little bit here, like 5-3, 5-2-1s. Actually, of course, my winning lineup wasn't that, but we can mention that later. What happened there? Talk one way, that goes the other way, and really, I figured out you lead the stacks, and it's almost like pitchers or goalies in NHL. Like you fill those out with that, and that's where you kind of can build some more customization going up and down the ladder, and kind of assess your risk level for the night too. Like there's just looking at the pool and understanding what it is, where ownership lies, and that's how you can kind of build from there. I'll go a little more detail on MLB specifically what I do, but it's very much the same as NHL, and that's why I kind of dove into it this year. And I've been actually last week, get to toot my own horn. I get talking too much here, but last week I was 10th in the same contest. Like I've been close. Jack and I have been debating or kind of going back and forth. Jack had some close calls, so variance finally went our way. So we're still pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I
You know,
mean, well, I mean, you've been getting extremely close. I've been seeing some of your results, and the fact that you mentioned NHL is so similar to MLB is what I've been trying to preach and what we've been trying to preach at Occupy Fantasy. And it's kind of the reverse, right? A lot of DFS players play MLB, but there's an ignorance when it comes to NHL, and most people don't know the similarities between the sports because, like you said, stacks reign supreme, and goalies are very similar to pitchers as far as projectability and where they fit into your lineup. So glad to see you make that transition into MLB. Now, what I want to talk about next, and when we brought this up in our Discord this morning and said that we were going to interview, a lot of people had questions about your process, and rightfully so because you're successful. You had the big win last night. You mentioned kind of your lineup strategies a bit in Discord this morning. And really, what I wanted to pick your brain on is what I call this iterative process, because as all of us, right, and as DFS players, we should have an iterative process. It should continue to change. We shouldn't be static because the game changes. We find out new information. And honestly, if you look back at your play a year ago, 2 years ago, you kind of shudder at how much you didn't know when you were making lineups and winning. So, talk to me about 150 maxing and whether it's NHL or MLB, or maybe it doesn't have to be 150 maxing, but high risk lineup building in general. Talk to me about finding out new information and implementing new tactics and trying out new things and how that transitions into what our lineup builder does.
Yeah, perfect. Actually, this is a great question. I'm going to lean a lot on hockey here, so I apologize to everyone. But again, hockey and baseball, very similar in the end, similar ideas. So I'll lean on hockey for some of these examples. So apologies for people for baseball. We'll talk about baseball here in a second, but it's my crutch. Let me have my crutch.
Do it.
Um, so, oh shoot, I just blanked.
No worries. So
You
we're
can
talking
keep
about
going.
NHL DFS and the iterative process.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's where I was gonna start. Okay. So where I go with NHL is, I change year to year. I do not keep the same. There's nothing that stays the same year over year, month over month, week over week to an extent. Like at some point you have to keep consistent and kind of evaluate. But there is 2 years ago in NHL. When did they change the score? 3 years ago. Anyway. I think like 2 years ago, new scoring system. 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, new scoring system. No one knew what to do. But what I did, I'm like, I'm not going to be the one that's go figure it out. I'm not going to waste a bunch of money and throw it in these 150 max and figure out. I'm going to go look at what the other guys are doing and see what starts to work. And if anyone remembers the famous, if you play NHL, you're going to know B. Kreider, Bkreider. He goes a bunch of live finals. He's a shark. But he started to notice he was winning the slate every single day. And you're like, what is this guy doing? I'm just going to copy what this guy is doing. He's a pro. He knows what he's doing. And then, sure enough, the results started to come and started to like just back into this. It was 3-3-1-1 was kind of the first year. Everyone was doing this 3-3-1-1, which is actually silly in hindsight because now this last year that kind of faded out. I had Jack add it to the builder. I was all excited. It's like, this is it. This is how you win. And it's really back to 4-3-1, which was always the old way to do it. Even before the scoring change, you 4-3-1s. And it was just kind of, but it's just that continually thinking, learning. Look what other people are doing. Like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing what everyone else is doing, or am I completely off the wall? Like sometimes you can find maybe there's a balance between it, but if you're doing something separate and you're not getting the results, it's one of those things. Step back and take a look at, and that's one of the things I always make sure I aggressively do because I don't want to assume I'm right. Some things change. Just something's different. I think last year, this is what I alluded to earlier in this conversation. Last year at the end of the hockey season, I actually struggled a little bit. I had a great run. Last month, I struggled a little bit. The dynamics of how a lineup was built, and some people found on, I think I kind of picked up on it a little bit. There's some correlations that can be had with these really cheap defensemen. So you're able to jam these cheap guys under 3,000, salaries of 3,000, and really get in these, the 3Ms, McKinnon, Matthews, McDavid, for anyone who plays hockey. You're able to jam them in and correlate around them a little bit and build up these really insane lineups using their cheap defensemen that play with them, 10 minutes a night. And all I need is an assist and a shot on goal, and they've hit value. So just little things like that. Like end of last year, I was going a little slow. Did some research. Now I'm kind of ready to start this year. I kind of have a new approach, ready to go at it. And it's always I always want to be learning. I don't want to ever sit down and say I figured this out because I haven't. I know there's always gonna be something different and something else to find. For let's say I'll throw an MLB reference here. Specifically for MLB, something that Jack and I have queued into is looking at bullpen strengths. We've been doing it for probably 2 months now. We kind of figured it out a little while ago. And it's just this small edge, like these top bullpens. Tampa Bay has a great bullpen. I believe the Yankees, Red Sox have pretty good bullpens. And you go look at those teams, like your stack upside is limited if they have a bullpen that come down and shut you down. Sure, there's exceptions to the rule. Like there's nights that people go. I actually looked at the Twins last night against the Red Sox. They were lighting up the bullpen, and I thought a Twin stack was going to pass me. But anyway, you just look at that like if I don't love that stack and it's highly owned, it's just an easy fade. I can get into some of this here in a second here on that. Like I'll just take the risk. I'll take the risk. Like maybe if they get to the starter early and get to the pen might save the day for them. So just little things like that where I try to incorporate just small things that might give me just just a little edge, just something that puts me above the field.
For sure. And you mentioned two great things there. One is copying what other successful players do. I think a lot of people either have an ego or they don't know that this is a thing, but there are many resources out there where you can look at what the top players are doing in different sports. And you can go to RotoGrinders rankings, you can see who the top ranked players are, let's say NBA, and you can go to RotoGrinders, Fantasy Labs, whatever it may be, look at contest results, look at their player pools, see what their exposures are, see how they're building lineups. And if these people are so successful, you can take different pieces from their strategies and pull it into your own. Secondly, what you said, you never stop learning. And that should always be the case, not just for DFS, but right for everything, right? As you get more information, your opinions and your strategies should change. And so I really appreciate that about you because you've done both of those very successfully, and it's super impressive. So I'm excited to see what you do in NHL this season as you continue to grow and change. But actually, before we get to MLB, just really quick, I do want to talk to you because you've had a hand in helping the lineup builder. It's one of the big reasons I like our lineup builder is because we have the ability to change it and modify it if we get enough support or if we get really good suggestions. I don't know if you've used other optimizers or lineup builders, but just quickly, briefly, what do you like so much about the Occupy Fantasy lineup builder?
Yeah, I'm not going to name the products. I've used two other products, and Occupy is like by far the best one I've worked with. I mean, obviously, immediately earlier this year, actually MLB, I was kind of tinkering with it for NHL and bought it for NHL. But then once I figured out how powerful it was for MLB, I was all in. But the thing that like there's any kind of slate and any kind of approach to it, as long as you have a theory or a way to attack it, you can do it as little as 5 clicks. You can pretty much have something set up to attack the slate, or you can go customize the living hell out of it and do set up very specific rules and stacking limits and all these things. And I've done both. I've done both successfully on slates. On hockey, actually, one of my best nights on hockey, I pretty much trained one of the main GPPs. I pretty much just clicked in my 4 or 5 teams and hit optimize. I honestly there was no secret to it. It was like the model was on exactly what I wanted to be on and just let it go. And there's nights in baseball where it's like you really kind of have to look deep at the pool. Like, okay, this team doesn't have a shortstop. Like, I need to fill a shortstop on DraftKings. So then you got to start exploring 5-2-1. Am I going to one off some shortstops in there? How am I going to get a shortstop? Is it always going to be one stack shortstop? How am I going to work with that? And then you can start going at those levels of deeper custom rules, one offs, and all that type of stuff. Like it's all there. It's just a matter of what your time and your commitment to do it is. And actually simple, and that's not saying like you have to go complex. Like again, simple can be the right answer. Like you have a slate and you're just like slam dunk. This is it. Gonna go sign my team, sign my pitchers, jam out 20 lineups, done. Move on.
Sometimes it is that easy, right? And I wish some of those days were every day, right? Because the time that it does save. But again, like you said, sometimes, and I find this in other sports as well, I'll talk about it, I'll set my exposures, and the lineups will spit out perfectly. It's like, wow, that couldn't have been any easier. Other days, depending on the strategies or the teams I'm using or the exposures I'm setting, nothing will work correctly. And I have to spend 2, 3, 4 times as long. It just depends on the slate. So let's talk about MLB because I think this is what a lot of people are tuning in for. Your MLB process. I don't think you would characterize yourself as an MLB pro, but clearly you have a very good process. So let's say it's 3, 4 o'clock, and Matt, you're sitting down to look at tonight's baseball slate. You're going to start building lineups. Talk me through what you're looking at, what your decision points are, and how that process concludes before lock.
Yeah, sure. I'll talk to that. I would also say I hope everything I'm saying is kind of reiterating the point because I want to also throw this over things that are mentioned in the Discord, things that you talk about, Brian, it's what I do. Like in the end, I'm just going to boil down this. You guys talk about a process, but it's things we've all talked about. We've chatted about in Discord. You're great staff that write the plugs. walk you into this stuff. It's just mattering. It's to figure out like how to make it fit for you, because it's a lot of information. It's just like, it's almost in my mind. I mean, I'm a CPA, so I like things a little organized. It's, going through this order sequence of events almost, like, and that's how I'll do it. So I'll kind of walk. That's just to give everyone a background. That's how I'll kind of think about it. That's how I walk through it. You might want to do it, flip it, do it the other way. Anyway, this is just my perspective. Hopefully nothing new, but you can just get to understand how I do it.
I do want to say just
So
really quickly though. I do want to say I agree, because there is so much information out there. There's information overload in every sport, right? And especially baseball when there's so many players on the slate. So I do think that's a great point. And I think a lot of people would benefit from you talking about in this process conversation how you whittle it down, how you just have a narrow focus on the slate.
yeah, so where I start is stacks. I said it earlier. I start with the stacks. Like, that's my priority. Pitching is nice. I will, like, it's the second thing I look at. But the stacks are number one, and I lean heavily on the OF index. Like, that's the OF index is there for a reason. It's strong. The model's strong. The model's great. Like, lean on that. It's kind of like rule of thumb. I kind of look at as 50. I think we've talked about. I think some people have just discussed on Discord before. Anything above 50, I'll consider in the scope generally. If I dive below, I'm getting cute, or a way to add exposure to something like if Boston's the most expensive stack, I want more ways to stack Boston. Maybe I'll throw in a Pittsburgh or a Miami or whatever. But
And you're mentioning the stack dashboard OF, the combined OF index for the stack, right?
Yes, yeah, the stack dashboard. Start there and pretty much just figure out what top 4 teams. It's 3. I would say 3 to 5. Say 4 for the sake of easiest. 3 to 5 depending on slate size, but generally 4 teams. I got to kind of narrow it down to 4 teams, and that's my launching point. So depending on the slate, sometimes I just generally go click it in. Pitchers, I can talk about pitchers for a while, because I kind of have the little bit. Let's go to pitchers actually, because you kind of got to figure that out the next. So you can look at your stacks. Generally, all I do is go look at pictures. Any crazy high off indexes, I'm going to try to at least match the field or more. Like, I think that's the no-brainer. But on days, actually yesterday was a really good example. There's no one over 18. Burns got close. I think he's like a 17-9. So I let him go to the field, but that's kind of my cutoff point, where I was like, ownership's all over the place. I'm okay. I have a tight 3, or last night I went 3 main stacks with 2 supporting stacks, more smaller stacks. I can talk about that more once we get to that.
So really tight really tight player pool last night then.
Yeah, and that's why I feel okay going like spread pitcher. I just kind of spread pitchers out. Someone actually sent me a DM on that. I spread out pitchers, because if you look at ownership, it was all over the place on pitchers. So I was okay. I'll lean into OF on a couple of the top 4. I think actually 2 of the top 4 ended out in my lineup. Shocking how that works. But I just let some of the other guys below. And actually, the best one was, I can't remember. When people say players' names on podcasts, and you're like, wow, he doesn't know how to say his name. I'm gonna be that guy. I don't even know how to say that St. Louis pitcher's name, but he was low on the index. He was an easy fade. Stuff like that. Like,
It was Flaherty last night, right?
Flaherty, thank you.
Yeah.
You know how you listen to people and you're like, oh, that's so easy. How does he not know how to say Jokiharu?
Yeah, right. Same exact thing with NHL. I would butcher those names completely, so I'm with you.
Yeah, and then I look at baseball and it's like, I actually don't know how to say that guy's name. So anyway, it's much easier. Trust me, it's easier when you see someone say it than when you have to think about it and say it on the fly, especially if you don't know how to say it. Anyway, and then I just do a run. Like, I do a run. Let's do the basics, strict settings, put my guys in, my stacks in, generally I just do 1 through 9. Depends on the slate, where I might drop some hitters that are really low OF index, depending on position and my need for it. But for simplicity's sake, honestly, I went back to being simple the last couple weeks here. All 1 through 9 hitters on my 4 main stacks, and the pitcher pool, and then make sure you set it to high, the high risk setting. I can't remember what that's called.
The randomizer. Yep.
Yes, thank you. Randomizer. Strict mode, high risk. Set my stack rules, which are generally FanDuel 4-4, 4-3-1, DraftKings 5-3, 5-2-1, and let it run.
And real quick. While we're on that subject, why those stacks? Like, I think some people know, a decent amount of people know why those stacks, but why are you playing those specific stacks in baseball?
So the reason I'm sticking those stacks is, well, your upside night, like, if you look at the scores, your upside nights through those teams that get the 12, 13, like the Angels, 14 runs last night. Like, that's your upside. You got to hit players on those pieces, and the players on the same team correlate. I actually seen this somewhere. It's one of the DFS expert Sharks actually just he tweeted about it. I can't remember who for the life of me, but just said one of the strongest things you can do is play a teammate with his own teammate in a baseball lineup, because they correlate better than any other metric we chase. Your models, your ISO, your WOBA, your whatever. Like, just stacking 2 teammates is one of the most beneficial things you can do. So essentially, that's one of my theories. I don't know if it's totally true or not, but actually, I think we've seen the results and actually looking at lineups, like I talked about earlier, all the pros do it. So I kind of just lean into it pretty hard
And
and say the
to that note, right? Like, doesn't matter how good your projections are. If two guys are close, pick the one that correlates better with your lineup because the correlation we know for a fact is there. Projections always have a margin of error, whereas the correlation can
yes.
always overcome that.
Yeah, exactly. And you're going for ceilings. Like I'm playing a GPP. I want to win first, a little bit win first or nothing. I'll be perfectly honest. Like, and that's why I'm okay jamming. I mean, jamming. Just sometimes I look at the guys that actually end out in there. I'm like, really? You played a? I think someone called it out. Played like a 5 hitter and a 9 hitter. I
Right.
was like, really? Okay, whatever. I mean, it's I'm aiming high. I'm not trying to min cash that lineup. I'm trying to win everything.
It's
So
also it's
that's
also
where I think.
easier when you don't know the players, right? Like if it was hockey, right, and you're like, I don't know if I want to play this guy, but baseball, it's like, yeah, it's just the name on the spreadsheet.
I actually think it helps a little bit. Hockey, because I have that bias, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. It actually probably helps a little bit just to
Right.
have that. But that's a good point. It's a funny point. But yeah, I stick to that, and then that's where really the process can get interesting. Run it. I usually run actually 100 lineups, so I can talk about that if we want to talk about that. You're throwing in here. I usually run about like 100 lineups to see where things are lying. Just helps me think about it, like where the percentage are lying, and then determine. And that kind of level sets me like, okay, it's trying to jam like 90%. You see some days it tries to jam 90% twins. I'm not going to play the 90% twins. They're going to be. That's when you start looking at. I actually go back and then start evaluating ownership a little bit and say like, what's the level? I want to be if I'm going to lead into the stack. I'm only going to use 4 stacks. I'm going to be 2 or 3 times the field no matter what. But starting to set caps on it really is what I do. So if Boston last night I think was pretty chalky actually. I don't remember. I mean, 14 games like they weren't horrible, but I think they were projected to be pretty chalky. And so it was like, yeah, I want to get I capped at 40%. Essentially, I'm not going to have all my lineups be Boston because I want these other stacks to mix into each other a little bit. And so that's why I slowly go through capping them or looking at ownership. And if I see, if my pool's working out, I'll generally kind of leave it be unless if I pick the 4 chalkiest teams. The only reason I call this out is if I pick the 4 chalkiest teams, I'm not going to win. Like I know I'm not going to win. Someone else is going to come up with a better lineup. They're going to come with a precise, a little 4-2-1-1 or something. They hit these 2 perfect one-off 8 hitters that hit 2 home runs. I'm not going to win on those nights. So I will sometimes make a substitute for a lower owned stack to go through my main stacks. Like that's about the only. It's like one of my main uses of ownership, I think, and it's just a high risk approach. Like I'm
And
dropping off something. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, sorry. Are you excluding all chalky stacks? Are you playing like
No, no, no,
let's
no.
say there's a 6 game slate and one team's projected for 150% cumulative ownership? You would still play them. You're just making sure not to play all main chalky stacks.
Yeah, so if there was 150% and 100%, I would probably set that they can't. I'd set a stacking limit. They can't even stack together. Like I just do
Okay.
that. I'm not going to win. Like I'm not going to. I my chances of winning are almost zero in that case. Like I'm not going to find the perfect exact match of a 5-3 if the field's doing that too. That's me though. So I'll just point that out. Like so I think some other people do lean on that idea too. But I will just swap a stack out if I'm too chalky. I will swap a stack out and literally go worse than OF index to make it, just make it a little more diverse and just give
Gotcha.
myself a chance. And I think Arizona actually, I used Arizona last night as one of the sub stacks I talked about, and didn't work out. But hey, they were bottom barrel ownership. Why not?
Right. And so, are you always capping your exposure to a stack? Like, let's just say all four of your main stacks are low owned. Are you always capping? Like, you don't want 90% of any one stack?
Yeah, that's I already gonna like, I'm gonna run if I'm gonna run if I'm gonna run 100 lineups, I don't need 40 iterations of Baltimore and the Angels.
Sure.
Honestly, like at some point it just starts to swap out one player here and there, and I will sure I could train the hell out of it, but I'll cap it. I want to train. I actually do train a lot. I don't know if when you see my lineups, they tend to be clustered. Actually, the screenshot kind of showed it. Like I'm using very similar things. I know they're already swapping one for one. I had a lineup last night that was I think it swapped one different player, completely different result. Missed out on one of the Baltimore guys that hit a home run. But I'm okay with letting it do that a couple times, and then at some point it's just like that's enough risk for me. I don't need to do 20 iterations the same lineup. That's a thing that I have. I think we talk about Jack. I think Jack embraces that a little bit. Sometimes I do, but I kind of backed away from it a little bit.
Got you. Got you. And again, that's personal preference, right? Some people will take on that risk and be more willing to have a multiple results near the top or at the bottom. It just depends on your risk level. So that's very interesting. So let's talk about last night specifically. So you talked about the stacks that you chose, talked about your pitching. Um, Any other notes about last night's slate in particular that was different for you that you thought would be interesting to talk about, or we can get right into the sweat? It's up to you.
I'll talk about it for 2 seconds. I'll close up some of those thoughts I was talking about. Last night, the was horrible to build lineups. It was one of the worst nights, but actually, I found those are the nights where I'm starting to set if I don't even set rules and it's having problems, I actually think that's a kind of a good thing in my mind. It's like the field's going to see this and panic and swap out something. So I'm like, okay, I already know. I mean, the winning lineup, Boston, Red Sox, Angels, Orioles. Look at my MLB knowledge kicking in. And then I used a little bit of Pittsburgh and Arizona. I call it out Arizona just because of price, ownership, and they could fit in. I think Boston was pretty expensive. They could fit in with Boston, like cap them. So the reason for I want to just call it the reason for the Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh and Arizona. They were the lineups. They were on that far left of that screenshot. They were the lineups, didn't do anything. But they were, again, I set them, capped them 10% exposure. Boston, all the other guys, my main stacks 40%, 10% exposure, and then limited how many times they could stack with my main stacks. It was just a way to differentiate a little bit. Like that's the only reason I'm doing it. Some nights it works, a lot of nights it doesn't because there's a reason they're low owned. Actually, I mean those teams had decent OF indexes last night, so I was confident I could throw them in for high risk lineups. They just give me a little of a different flavor, and it'll be something. It's definitely going to be a unique lineup. MLB not too worried about being unique, but you do see short slates. Sometimes you have to worry about it.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Matt. So you made 33 lineups last night, right? For this contest. Is that right? Okay. So I have two questions for you. One, why specifically 33 lineups? And then I actually have three questions. So let's see if we can answer this all briefly. One, why 33 lineups specifically? Two, do you normally not max enter these contests? Which, if you listen to us and you listen to the core tenets of Occupy Fantasy, it's only enter the maximum amount, only enter a contest if you can enter the maximum amount. But really, what that's trying to say is don't throw a single bullet into a contest where people can have 150 lineups. I think if you're profitable and your results show that you can enter 20, 40, 60 lineups in a 150 max, go for it. And I think it's different here. So I want to know, do you normally do that? And then three, as you know, because we have a lot of people that don't use lineup builders or optimizers, if you could sum all of this up into a way that people who hand build lineups can use, whether it's all our tools or just baseball in general, to build high risk lineups. So I know it's a lot I threw at you, but let's see if we can cover it all.
Yeah, we'll go back to the first one. I can cover it all. Trust me.
Okay.
What was the first question?
So the first question is why 33 lineups specifically last night? We'll go question by question, and I'll ask it again.
33 lineups was because I kind of alluded to it and then didn't get to the point. If anyone's noticing this, I ramble a little bit. Apologies. Thank you for listening. I could not make more lineups, in all honesty. Like really, it was just busting out. I was really steadfast on my cap. I'm never going to make more than 50. I will be honest. Like 50 to 60 is kind of my limit on DraftKings. Mostly because of what I just talked about. They're going to combine the lineups. So if I set a stacking cap at 20%, of those I'll get 6 different iterations of Baltimore and the Angels. And you know what? At that point, I'm going to trust the OF index. It's swapped a couple pitchers, swapped a shortstop or two. It's jamming the highest end guys. I'm trusting the model. And that's why I'm cutting it off. Like I don't need 20. I kind of talked about earlier. Don't need 20 versions. The 6 versions that the spit out is the best versions. Yeah, that's what I want. So that's why I do it. DraftKings specific, FanDuel. FanDuel tends to be a lower price point, so I feel a little more comfortable chasing them. DraftKings just bankroll manager. Like it's just this lack of. I'm a CPA, I'm an accountant. Like there's some inner. Even though I had the big win, like I'm not going to enter more than 40 lineups tonight. I'm not chasing it. Like I'm going to run it back. I'm going to try to run it back, sure, but I'm not going to run more than 40 lineups. It's just something that I've built the discipline into over 5 years. Like that's who I am. That's what I'm good at. And also throw back one more thing. In NHL, I look back at I use Roto Tracker. I'm really good at like that. That's just my range. 20 to 40 lineups is where I'm good. Like I know how to set my stacks and what I want from them and run with it. I don't know why. It's just a thing. That's where I think I get the ability to tinker with them a little manually and just something I figured out through practice.
But that's awesome though, because you figured out what you're good at and you stick with it, right? Like, sure, you have the ability to make 150 lineups, but you have the ability to make 150 good lineups. I don't know if maybe you have that ability. I don't know, but you found your sweet spot. Why not, hone in on that and just, jam up your expected value if you could just keep doing that specifically.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I totally agree. It's just a sweet spot that works for me. Really, I like to manually look at everything at the end and 150 lineups. I did it for hockey a little bit. I did 150 lineups a lot through the middle of the year and had a lot of success. but it was a pain. I don't know if I'll do it again. I will probably again like go 40 to 50 lineups. It's a tool that I have. I could pull it out if I wanted to, but is the desire there? Is the time there? I don't know. So it
That's fair.
also helps that maybe I'm not the best at it. So there makes it easier just to go down to 20 to 40.
Totally fair. Totally fair. So now, actually, you mentioned it a little bit, and I think this transitions to the final question I had for you. What is your advice for someone who hand builds lineups? Obviously, you use the lineup builder, but to me, what you were saying is you're not digging deep into our OF index. And if you're not an Occupy Fantasy member, that's fine. We obviously encourage you to join. But if you don't use our builder and our model, that's fine. But to me, Matt, it sounds like you don't actually dig that far deep into the Occupy model for hitters, pitchers, stacks, whatever it may be. You're just going with the top. You're not doing much else besides what the model is giving you. So I guess, to that point, to someone who's hand building lineups, what is your advice for them?
Actually, that's great because I hand built hockey. Last year's the first year using an optimizer. I hand built hockey for 4 years.
Okay.
So I'm a hand builder by heart, and that's why I like to look at my lineups. And sometimes I go make tinkering. And what do I do? And what I do when I go tinker with something, it's generally just creating more correlation or just looking at the salary remaining, just thinking about, oh, this is MME. I should go back to the single entry. My bad. I got a little ahead of myself,
No
but
worries.
that's finish that thought off. That's where I go with that. For single entry, again, it's still the same thought applies. Like you have to, in my mind, like high risk single entry. I'm a high risk player, I'm not a cash player, so don't ask me about high risk single entry. You're aiming to win it all. And guess the lineups that work in the MME, the same type of lineups you want to put in high risk single entry. You think you can kind of cheat and go a little 5-1-1-1. I think a little bit in DraftKings, but I'd still say like, I'm gonna pick a 5-man stack, drop in the 5, and then go find my supporting stack. I'm just going to use, for this case, use the OF index, the single lineup builder tool. I do that for a couple hand lineups here and there. Just use it, drop in the top 5 guys, go find my other stack. Sometimes I tweak one or two guys. I think the only small thing that maybe you see is if the $5,400 shortstop Trevor Story or something on Colorado, and it has a 5 index, and you come across the other team that you really want to stack him with, and they have a 4.9 index, $3,000 salary shortstop, I'll swap them out. You know what I mean? Like at that point, I'm paying 3,000 extra bucks for guys that are in that that middle grounds. I'm trying to stack, but they're all the same to me. Like at that point, they're the same OF index, save some salary, go get a little higher, better pitcher.
Gotcha.
Or maybe swap that out. And that's how I do it. It's like I still stick to my stack, stick to my core stack, and then fill out from there. Really, that's how I did it for hockey too.
There you go. So we had this discussion in the Discord multiple times. Start with your stacks if you're playing high risk contests. So there you go. So appreciate that, Matt. All right, let's finish this off. I know Matt, you're a busy man, so let's finish this off with last night's sweat. 100K richer. You go into the slate, 33 lineups. The Angels get off to a hot start. The Orioles all of a sudden put up 8 runs in the middle innings. Talk to me about your mindset. Were you following the games? Did you follow them all the way through to the end? Talk to me.
Yeah, so well, I'll get into a little superstition here. So, Jack, we talked about Jack a couple times. Build the optimizer. Actually, good little piece of advice is use the Discord or find a buddy like sanity check. Sometimes if you go pick 4 teams, like just throw it out there in the Discord. I feel like I should do it a little bit more. I use Jack as my little sanity buddy. He's like, hey, am I missing something? We're just using top of the OF index, nothing here. So I use him like I kind of use him as my little sanity check buddy. And then we go into the slate, and we're just kind of talking to each other. It's a little bit like I'm chasing my kid around. I have a 13-month-old kid,
Which is
chasing him
perfect
around.
pre-lock, by the way. No issues there.
Yeah, and baseball is great because you don't have to check it. Hockey's the worst for late swaps. Last year was pretty bad. It
Yeah.
usually isn't that bad. Last year's bad. Chasing the kid around, you look, and it's like, what the hell happened? Like, how did the Angels score? And you look at it, it's 8 runs, and it was like dink and dunk, for lack of a better term. That's a football term, sorry. It was just like singles and doubles. It was like kind of not great baseball. You're like this isn't gonna win anyway. So you start ignoring it. But then you kind of hit that point where it's when Baltimore started going off, and you're like, well, shit, like, what was it, Mountcastle? He was like, I think he was the top OF index in Baltimore. Actually, I'm pretty sure on that.
Yep.
And I knew I saw he was jammed into a bunch of lineups. It's like, well, he got one, and then I don't even know my own lineup at this point. Was Santander in it or something like that?
Yep.
So you say his name, and he hits one, and you're just like, something's happening now. Something is happening, and I'm like one of those weird people that don't check the app. I don't like checking the app. I don't want to know what my scores are. I check it. I just see this huge cluster near the top. I'm going scrolling down and seeing Jack all over the place too, or just start texting each other. Like, we got this. We got a chance. We got a chance for this. And then we talk each other down. Stop paying attention. And then you realize that it's near the end of the slate. The Boston, the late run scored. I thought I was dead. I wasn't even paying attention. Boston hits one last home run, and I think it must have been the bottom of the eighth. I think it was bottom of the eighth.
Yep.
I didn't even realize I had the guy in my lineup. He's the one hitter. Was it Kiki Hernandez?
Yep.
Again, I don't know his name.
You got it.
I saw he hit the home run. All of a sudden, I'm number one. I'm like, wait, what the hell? And I still have a pitcher going, and I just had no idea, honestly. And at that point, it was all right. Game center on. TV on. When's this Padres game on? Full sweat time, and so all night was pretty much. As soon as those games ended, it was like, check what can beat me, and it was Fernando Tatis on the. Is it Tatis?
Tatis, yep.
Say it. I'm in San Diego, and I don't even know how to say his name.
That's a shame. That's actually a shame. Yeah, that's embarrassing.
Everyone can give me crap for that one. I'll be honest.
People are gonna be so mad when you can't even pronounce Fernando Tatis' name and you won 100K in MLB.
I know, and he's he's a new poster boy for MLB.
Yep.
I'll spare everyone. I used to play baseball. I just burned out from it. I just got sick of it. So I haven't watched. I used to watch it all the time. But yeah, watched that whole game. First baseball game I watched all year. Watched that whole game and just sweating everything in that game. So it was he fouled. I think the most important was his last two at bats. Fouled out. I think to the third base or first base. I don't remember which way he fouled out. And then the last at bat, I was literally praying, just walk him, just hit him with the pitch or something.
Because only a home run beat you, right?
Yeah, it was a home run. It was a home run. This is the only way I was going to be able to pretty much lose that, or if it went like extra innings, which let's not talk about that sweat that I started thinking about once they got runners on. It walked and then felt pretty good after that. And then they finally the Dodgers reliever, he threw like 30 pitches. That was one hell of a closing session. Finally got it done. So
hell yeah, man. Well, congrats. 100K. Nice. That's amazing, dude. $100,000. This is what a lot of people play DFS for, to have a chance at that prize. And again, you've been grinding this for a while, right? So 5 years. This isn't something you just jumped into immediately and made it happen. But you put in a lot of the work, and so I commend you for that. A really incredible process. And again, if you take away one thing from this podcast, it's to keep learning, to have that iterative process, to keep seeing what works, what doesn't, finding out what other top players are doing. And then I like your point too about having a buddy that you can bounce ideas off of. And to be fair, if you're in this every day, your average friend, your family are going to look at you crazy and they won't understand it, right? So being a part of a community, whether it's our Discord, another Discord, chat rooms, whatever it may be, Twitter, having someone that knows the process and knows the ups and downs of it, and to be able to talk them through it. I think, Matt, that was an excellent point you brought up, and helps in more ways than one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I honestly, I wish I used the Discord more. You guys have some great people offering insight in there, and just throwing out that question. Hey, see Boston's top OF index. Is there anything looks like great single entry, high risk? Anything I'm missing on that? And sometimes that's what I'm saying. Someone's gonna point out, hey, they're playing a great pen. Maybe it's less upside than you think, and look at their ownership. Look at 2 and 3. You can combine 2 and 3 in the OF index. Just little things, tips and things here and there. That's what Jack and I do. We just talk about that. It's like, hey, and they're really expensive. You're gonna sacrifice everything else. So it's just little things that can make or break a decision that I always appreciate to have. Some people to run it off against, and just check is everything I'm doing okay. So.
Well, that's great, and I have a feeling a lot of people are going to be asking you to be their buddy come NHL season this upcoming year.
I'll be a buddy for NHL. Don't be MLB. I'm going to tell you what I told you. I have to tell you on this. Just pick some stacks and run with it. Really, that's mostly what I'd say. If you're trying to pick some stacks, go run in the quarter or the dimes, and I'm a figure it out as I go person. So that's how I do it. If you're really trying to figure some of the stuff out, go start low. Do not play the contest I just played, because that is I burned some money chasing this thing all year. And this finally one big, but it's variance one my way. So.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. You're playing high risk contests for these types of days, and you need that spike week or spike day to make up for all the losses, and that's why we play high risk contests. So, Matt, congrats on your spike day. I'm glad you hit it. So happy for you, because I know personally you've been grinding a lot at this. So to see that payoff is amazing. For those of you who are following along, you can talk to Matt in our Discord channel, occupyfantasy.com/Discord. His name is Minnesota Matt, Matt in the Discord. Occupyfantasy.com is where you can access the Occupy model, the lineup builder that Matt has been talking about. Matt, I appreciate your time. Again, like I said, I know you're very, very busy, so I appreciate you talking to us and sharing your story. Any final thoughts for the people out there?
Appreciate it. I apologize, everyone. I'm a little bit of a rambler. I hope someone took something away from it. I hope nothing, any Occupy members listening, hopefully nothing new. Just keep refining your process. The pieces, the tools are there. Lean on the model. The model is great. But I appreciate Brian giving me a forum. It was fun talking to you.
Absolutely. It was a blast talking to you, Matt, as well. I learned a lot from you. during this session too. So if you like what you saw here, make sure you're subscribed, whether you're listening to this in podcast form on any podcast app, you can subscribe. And if you're watching this on YouTube, the video version, make sure you subscribe. NFL season's right around the corner. Tons of new videos coming. So for Matt, nolt0032 on DraftKings, Minnesota Matt in our Discord channel. I'm Brian Jesser, co-founder of Occupy Fantasy. We appreciate you listening. Good luck.